Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and hands-on learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. My name is Sylvan and I will be your host. Today we're heading back to the beautiful city of Lausanne to meet with Patrick Thevoz, co-founder and CEO at Flyability, as well as with Swisscom Ventures investment partner Alexander Schläpfer. Flyability develops drones for the inspection and exploration of indoor, inaccessible and confined spaces. But drones are not the only thing flying at this startup. The company is currently growing like crazy and is even ranked as Switzerland's #1 startup on the top 100 list. We arrived shortly after lunchtime and realized that most employees have lunch together and therefore also spend some of their free time with the company. This is usually a really good indicator of a strong company culture. The beautiful view over Lake Geneva and the adjoining mountains is probably another reason why the office is so valued by its employees. What was particularly noticeable on our tour through the office was the visual communication of their core values. Their 10-point manifesto is communicated all over the company and explained in detail with posters of every single point. This is not only a great guideline for employees, but also an impressive form of developing a successful culture. After this memorable tour, we sit down in a conference room and start with the podcast recording. Swisscom Ventures is the venture capital arm of Swisscom, the leading telecommunications and IT services provider in Switzerland. Since their inception in 2007, Swisscom Ventures has invested in over 60 Swiss and international tech startups that foster digital transformation. If you're an entrepreneur building a product that drives the digitalization in a certain market and you are looking for capital, then reach out to the Swisscom Ventures team at www.venture.swisscom.com. Alexander and Patrick, a very warm welcome to the show. It's great to have you here today.
It's a great pleasure to be at Flyability, our favorite portfolio company.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us today. Very excited to share a little bit of what we have learned along the way.
We're curious to hear more about your story, Patrick. You studied engineering at the EPFL in Lausanne and then worked as a consultant for about 4 years in total. So I'm wondering, what have you actually learned in your corporate career that you could then also apply to your startup Flyability?
Sure. Well, I think, as I was studying engineering, I pretty much very early realized that I really wanted and needed things to go really fast. And that was what consulting was a good platform for, learning really fast new things. It was this ability to change companies, working in one of the biggest pharma company, moving to a smaller company, doing agriculture in another part of the world, and then working for the food industry. So that was forever changing. Very focused on one particular issue at a time, and it really allowed me to get an understanding of how different companies are operating, which is such an important thing when you're a first-time entrepreneur and you have to redo everything. Things that have already been done 100 times, but when you just start, you need to understand, okay, what are the general, workplace policies and what should I be providing what are the key aspects of a good working environment. And all of those little things by working in large, very well-established corporations that have very well thought out processes and ways of working saved us probably a lot of time. However, in the consulting business, the problem is that you can only focus for so long on one particular topic. Things come to an end and you really lack this connection with the output of your work. And, did it work? Did this, all those ideas that we had and that started implementing, did it come to fruition at some point? And this is what really pushed me to move to start, our company at Flyability, to have a long-term impact on a particular project.
Fantastic. You also started the company that you just mentioned, Flyability, with your second cousin, Adrian. Can you tell us how you actually reached the decision of starting your own company and why Adrian is the right co-founder?
You often hear that the choice of your co-founder is one of the most critical success factor in building a business, and one of the important reasons for failing for early startups. In our case, well, with Adrian, we know each other since we were born, so it allowed us to spend pretty much 30 years worth of holidays together. So both from a personal standpoint, and we also studied at EPFL together at the same time by a coincidence. Actually, we didn't. It was not a decision to go in the same class, but we both were interested in robotics and engineering. So we ended up working together, and we realized that it was something that was very efficient, very complementary, both very hardworking and dedicated, I believe. So we were always doing all our projects together for school, and getting them done in a very short amount of time, and then spending the rest of the times that we had having beers at the school bar. So that was a fairly obvious choice, and I think even before knowing what we were going to be developing together, we had this idea of trying to build a company, the two of us, and that was back in 2014. And I was actually at this time, indeed, I had taken a gap year from my consulting job and traveling around the world. And at some point I was like, okay, I'm coming back in 2 months. Let's get together and build something. And I have a few ideas, and maybe you also have some of yours. So let's try to find a good business to start. And that's where he actually was finishing his PhD thesis, and had actually a pretty good and interesting project ready for us to work on.
Awesome. And I think there was the first prototype that was already built by Adrian back in the days, right?
Yeah, we were very lucky because we started the company with a prototype, with a research prototype, which is and we realized that later, but is actually a very little step actually from a product. And when in our young, I would say, naive minds, having a working prototype was already at least half the job done. It turned out it was really not, and that there was actually a lot of work down the line to get to a successful product. Yeah.
Before we talk about how you actually successfully executed that and how you developed your product with your clients, I would also like to focus a bit on the macro level perspective. Alexander, drones are becoming an increasingly popular technology that are more used in different areas and spaces. So where is this whole industry and trend going from your perspective, from your understanding?
It's actually interesting looking back also. Drones originally emerged in the military and homeland security space. And so you talk fairly big and very expensive pieces of equipment. And then you would normally, with cost reductions and so on, you would expect them to come first to commercial markets and then ultimately maybe to the consumer markets. And with drones, it was the other way around, that maybe about 7-8 years ago, essentially the first very low-cost drones emerged in the consumer market. We all know DJI and the Chinese drones that really within a few years built a $5 billion industry. And it's only probably in the last 4 or 5 years that, from those, let's say, consumer drones, or let's say first consumer drones have then increasingly been also utilized in commercial applications, aerial photography, and from there then increasingly also in other tasks like in Flyability now in the industrial context. And that's something we're still in an early adoption sort of cycle. So we're not yet at the peak, but we see this now really accelerating. And the commercial market actually getting bigger than the consumer drone market. In particular, if you add not just to the hardware, also the services side, the software in the back end, and so on, that commercial market has already overtaken the consumer market.
A very interesting development. Patrick, when you started out with Fyability, sometimes it can be difficult for startup companies, to decide where they should start out. You already had a prototype, but then you obviously also need to find some customers. And you decided to develop the product with a very customer-centric approach. Can you walk us a bit more through the process about how you exactly did that and made sure that you actually develop a product that is also needed and used by the market and the right clients?
Yes. So as we discussed before, we had a prototype. So we already kind of had a technology, and we're a little bit in looking for a problem to solve with it. That is the kind of the common issues that we have with spin-offs from universities. So in our case, we didn't directly start a company. We started getting together and really thinking through about this problem, looking at really exploring the market and doing market research for about 6 months or almost before we started actually really working on any more technology advancement. So our first tactic to basically validate our market was to be very highly visible and transparent on our technology, which is also counterintuitive a lot, because we see a lot of young companies that are staying in stealth mode a lot and protecting their ideas, because obviously they have almost no resources. So anyone can, possibly come and execute faster with much more money, etc.
Weren't you afraid of that?
We were probably afraid of that, but we also pretty quickly understood that we were only going to succeed if we had indeed feedback from the market and from possible customers. We were pioneers in an industry, I would say a niche or a segment of the industry that did not exist. This indoor inspection drones, we were the first ones to ever target that. So there was even more job, even more work to be able to understand how the industry was going to evolve, who it will serve. Is it going to be, I would say, a toy for people to be playing augmented football? Is it going to be something that is helping police forces to act in emergency situation? Is it going to be industrial inspection? Is it marketing tool? All of those was very fuzzy. And when you look back, you say, oh no, that was obvious, but it was really not at the time. So we were very, very transparent and visible. So we showed we shooted videos and showed it to the world, and we managed to get pretty high volumes actually of views on those YouTube videos, because it was a very visual, new sort of product. So that's allowed to get a lot of actually inbound contacts of people saying, hey, actually, this thing, it's a bit of a stretch, but we have this problem, maybe it could help fix it. And that was our initial market research to kind of understand where the traction was the highest, and what were the low-hanging fruits. And from there, we indeed worked a lot with customers, shipping early prototypes and iterating on it, and always driving our directions from customer feedback, and not from our own feeling of what would make it a good product. Obviously, we have changed a lot with the company growing, because the first product is, it kind of is what it is. Your runway is pretty short. You need to find really the quickest path, or the minimum viable product from this that you can make out of this technology that fits some customers' needs, but you need also to throw away a lot of good ideas and actually accept to release something that is way less than perfect, because you will otherwise you will never launch your product. So in the early phases it was that, and we were there was obviously a lot of customer feedback, a bit of luck, a really good timing, our ability to get enough funding to get this really long road from prototype to product that we managed to have right. and it was a really good success on the market, because this first product is still being sold today, and we're coming close to 1,000 units actually sold. So it has been a great success. But that was the time when we were actually preparing our second product and thinking, now how are we going to be doing the same? Have the same approach, because everything has changed. We have much more resources, but at the same time, we also have a brand, and we have expectations from customers that have gone up a lot. We cannot anymore ship products half finished and expect that they will think it's really cool and help us improve it. We start to have more and more competitors that are looking at what we're doing, because obviously you have way fewer competitors when you're in a $0 market. Once you start to be successful, people are looking at what you're doing and trying to replicate it. So we had to find new approaches to remain really close to customers. So what we decided to do mostly was identify a subset of our customers that we first of all enjoy working with, that are representative of a very promising industry, and that have a lot of opportunity to go to the field, to run missions, and that have this, I would say, understanding of what a prototype is. So an expectation of reliability that is in line with the very, very early stage of a project. And so we're working actually for over a year with those people, from the very, very first ideas, putting it in their hands and learning from their experience on the field how we should actually shape the product. So our team gives the first very general direction of where the product should be going, and then it's through asking a lot of questions to customers. So first of all, broadly to all customers, some questionnaires, some calls with them to understand what they would like on a new product, but also being able to work very much in depth with a more restricted subset of customers with whom we can do day-long workshops to go really in depth of what features they need, how they need it implemented, etc.
And I think you call that the product advisory board or something similar to this.
Yeah, we call it the product advisory board, which is basically beta testers, and it's great because some of those people really identify to Flyability, even though they all have a full-time job in another company, because that's what qualifies them as relevant parties to us, is the fact that they are on the field and they need to deliver inspections with our products. But some of them on LinkedIn have this position as a product advisor at Flyability, which is really great. Yeah.
And I would like to dig a bit deeper into the setup of such an advisory board, because I think that's something that is not that common in the Swiss startup scene, or not that well executed as you do it. So from your perspective, what would be a good number of companies to have in there as testers, basically, as advisors? Is there any fixed number, or?
Yeah, no, I think, and as I was explaining, so first of all, I mean, what you need for your first product, what you need for your second product, and what we're planning for the next products is different. So you really need to adapt a lot to your business, to your team, the maturity of your industry. So I think generally speaking, you will need this kind of broad range approach where you can have more of a statistically significant feedback from the market, where you need as many people as you can to give general direction, and you see really interesting things happening when you ask those questions. But you also want this more focused group of people who are able to really dedicate time to you and who are I would say experts of the industry that you're trying to serve, and that are ready to give you feedback. So you need, I mean, I would say that 2-3 people, you're at risk of having a bit of a biased opinion, because your sample is going to be fairly imperfect. Above 10, you will need a pretty big product management team internally to be able to actually serve them well. because you need to spend a lot of time building prototypes when your production facility is not yet ready. So you are basically building by hand some prototypes. They're destroying them all the time. So you're rebuilding a new one, and so it's probably 10 is already quite a lot. So in our reality, between those two numbers is the right numbers from our experience. But going forward, we're still toying with new ideas of how to get in relevant market feedback, and there is definitely other ways to do that, especially as we're working more and more with larger groups, larger companies at a higher level. We need to find ways to understand also how we serve not only the guy on the field that is doing the inspection, but maybe also his boss or the boss of his boss, and maybe involve also those people in the product development phases.
And then how do you actually interact with the testing group, so to say? How do you interact with them, communicate with them on a regular basis? Does that happen when you're actually developing a new product, or should there also be some regular check-in just to bounce ideas around and get feedback from them? And how do you actually do that in terms of communication, getting the feedback?
I think we're always developing a new product. I mean, that's, we're never like, okay, now we're happy about what we have. Let's go on the beach. So we're constantly indeed testing new ideas on the field, and the successful ones turn into products. I think that on the life cycle of a customer, obviously we try to on a much broader scale, I mean with pretty much all our customer base, to remain in contact and identify at time of purchase what he's envisioning to do with our tools, following purchase, whether the plan has changed and whether he has managed to actually do what he originally thought he would do. And sometimes it's very interesting how I'm buying this robot because I have this particular part of my factory that I think is going to be important to inspect. And a few months later, you realize that actually this part needs an inspection every 5 years. So in the end, he did it once, but he's now using it every day for the inspection of another part of the facility. And this is very important for our sales and marketing activities, to have the right communication, target the right type of customers, more than and obviously understand the feature and the wish list, how we call that we always ask customers when we talk to them. And this is kind of I'd say how we stay in touch with the broader user base that we have, and continue to understand their satisfaction and their pain points.
And I can imagine that this sometimes also leads to not so easy decisions where you have great technology out there that you think is revolutionary, but people don't actually see a value in that new technology or are not really interested in. How do you make these decisions about what features you should then include, and how do you actually gather the customer feedback to guide these decisions too?
Yeah, it's very challenging indeed, because I would say that often you also have people, the people you hire are young engineers coming, out of PhDs, so they are very passionate about the latest trends that there is in research. You have also investors who are sometimes also pushing for the latest new trends, and we have always really focused on very pragmatic decision based on the market needs. But at the same time, and as it is often said, it's not the customer's job to know what they want. So it's a very, very complex topic, because you need to be able to identify the technologies that are going to be relevant in the medium, long term. You need to be investing in those technologies if they will make sense to your company, and you don't exactly know how yet. This is what we call research project, and we have some of them that we're launching. We don't. It's not yet a product. We're just learning about this technology and trying to apply it. And we need to just set the cursor at a certain point. Like, this is this is open-ended research that, and it's not our job as a company, as a young company whose job is to be growing our sales and business, to do basic research. But to some extent, there's this middle ground of technologies that are coming to maturity and that we will need to be really mastering when the time is right to put it in our product and to make a huge step. So we need to make the call of how much research we are we actually allowing ourselves to do, which everybody wants to do. I mean, with a bunch of like 60 engineers that we have here, everybody wants to do research, but sometimes you need to do more boring things such as industrialization and drawing very perfect schematics for your parts, etc. Basically, I would say that it's a balance, and it's an art, unfortunately, more than a science. What you do is what you believe is right, what customer tell you they want, what you believe that customer actually wants, and your gut feeling that you have that I really don't want to miss out on this thing. So let's throw some resources at this problem.
So it's basically a symbiosis of these several parts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also, what would be a good end result? Now you work with customers, you have them in an advisory group. What would be a good end result that you want to have as a company when you actually set this up? So what are you looking for? You also mentioned sales and marketing teams that are involved there to find the right customers, for example. Are there any examples that you can say, hey, these are good end results of working with clients that you can then actually implement in your business?
I mean, we launched a new product this year, which is called Helios 2. So it is we tried to put on this product everything we were very frustrated we couldn't on the first one because we needed to launch, and everything that our customer base has told us that was wrong or suboptimal with the first product. And so that was a very exciting and transformational moment for Flyability, because we were able to, from a MVP that is fairly frustrating, because it does the job, but it's minimum, and we don't like to build minimum things as engineers in general. We were able to go towards something that is really a great, well thought out product, much more easy to use, much more higher quality data. So this Helios 2 product, I think, is the end result of this whole process of working with customers, working iteratively. In a way, you can also see the first product as one step in this product development process that allowed us to kind of build the segment, to understand and to educate customers that maybe they could make use of this sort of technology, so that they can run their first experiment and then become more knowledgeable themselves about how they would use it in the future. And so it's a long, and that's the curse of I would say companies that are really starting from scratch in a market that is very much in infancy, that you need to create your market in a way, even though the need is existing, but the market that actually the drone can be a solution for this problem is not, and you need to spend a lot of effort and a lot of time in doing that before you are able to scale the business.
Mm-hmm. Now I'd also like to focus a bit on the investor side, on the investor perspective. Alexander, you already discovered Fyability in 2015, but it was still too early for an investment back then. Then in 2018, you decided to invest in the company. So what changed over this period of time that actually convinced you to make an investment?
Yeah, so 2015, I think I saw you flying a drone in a ballroom of one of the big hotels here in Lausanne.
We used to do that a lot, yeah.
Exactly, so that was the first impression. And then when I talked to Patrick, it was clear he was still looking for the application for that drone. And some of the ideas were really scaling the drone down and go into the consumer space, which I found a risky proposition. Launching a consumer product from a Swiss cost base is probably difficult. But he had also already first ideas in towards the industrial applications. And so at the point I decided that, it's still in terms of value proposition, proof of value, that is too early. We, as investors, we like to see, if not customer traction, at least some good use cases where you have maybe, launch customers that confirm to you this product does have or create value for them. And then 2018, this was clearly different. So at that point, they had already over 100 customers, they had shipped drones, and we were able to talk to these customers, and we got some very, very valuable feedback. And at that point, as investor, you start you see also the numbers in the financials, sales tripled, doubled over the years. And so you start thinking as investor, what could go wrong? Why could this not continue? So you start analyzing essentially, is there any first, where are we in the adoption cycle of this product? Are they already at 90% market share, and in a year or two the market will be saturated? Or is it really just at the very beginning? And that was clearly the case with Flyability. The regulatory environment, can these drones fly freely without permission? And that's in an indoor context much, much easier than in an outdoor context. And the third was, of course, also competition, and in particular competition from lower cost manufacturers like from China, where we saw that the market per se was certainly still too small for a large player to make a significant effort to get into this market, and at the same time that the technology was really differentiated, and had also patent protection around it, but much more, I think, also in terms of maturity to market, it was so differentiated that it wouldn't be easy for someone to just copy and come into it. So that triggered our decision. I mean, then we saw we were able during due diligence to fly the Helios 2, so we had that view on the next product launch, and that was just personally for me, flying that second generation drone was very easy to handle. That was a major experience, and we clearly also had from the market the feedback that this is what the market was waiting for. So it was the perfect moment to invest in the company. And
then you basically felt, hey, the rocket is launching, I want to be part of that rocket ride.
Absolutely, exactly. I mean, then you see here is something really taking off. Plus, the next booster stage is about to ignite, and so you want to jump onto that rocket. What is obviously, as investor, you always think you're paranoid. You think, what can go wrong now? So does that second stage really ignite or not? And that's essentially then the risk, the leap of faith you're taking as investor, that you say, okay, let's invest, and when things go less good as expected, then you're prepared to help fix that, of course. Huh?
Are there any good answers to these questions about what could go wrong from an investor's perspective that let you sleep more quietly at night?
I think, you need to be very honest with yourself. You will not find answers to all the questions. So you just need to keep them in mind, and start looking for ways to anticipate something going wrong. Particularly launching a new product, a second generation product. My personal experience in life as VC, I've seen such sort of second generation product launches go awfully wrong, where afterwards you lose 2 years because the product had to be back to the drawing board, completely redesigned, and essentially all the funding that you have given for the product launch is consumed before you can launch the product actually. And so that's what you're trying then to, try to anticipate. On a board level, you try to challenge the team, or at least investigate, get a feeling whether they are aware of those risks, whether they are anticipating some of what can be going wrong, whether they're planning sufficient time to validate the product prior to launching it, and work with them on a feasible plan.
And Patrick, I can imagine building such a successful company, you also faced a couple challenges along the way. How did you actually solve them, and what were the biggest challenges that you faced during the setup and the build-up of Flyability?
Yeah, the challenges are numerous and are often very difficult to predict as a first-time entrepreneur, because the role as a founder and as a CEO evolves so quickly with the company scaling up that at some point you kind of need to take problems as they come, sort of like a whack-a-mole sort of game, and have a great, I would say, network of advisors and people who've been going through that can help out and take take a step back with regards to the situation and help anticipate the issues. So obviously it definitely starts with building a company. It's a bit of an administrative nightmare when you absolutely don't know anything about how things should be done. Doing lots of administrative work and really walking in the unknown. So this is like the very first step. Then it becomes about starting to raise the first rounds and getting the first customers, which need to be done very much in parallel, because with just your own personal money, you can only go that far towards finding your first customers and delivering a prototype, and you kind of need that to get the first investors. So this is a game where you're really playing against the clock to be able to get this right. Then it becomes about scaling the team, and this is also big hiring challenges, and you realize it's often it feels like a rich people's problem to be, it's difficult to hire people when you're a very early founder. Like, it's difficult to have money to hire people. Hiring them actually is pretty easy. But no, you realize when the company is doubling every year, finding the right people is just such the critical success factor that it is actually your priority number one at some point. Then then you get a lot of more customers. You need to manage make sure that they're satisfied. Make sure you keep in contact with them. Scale the team in maturity, because by then you will need intermediate management layers. You will need to change the governance processes that make everybody work well and keep the spirit of a small company in what has become a 50 or 100 people company, and then it comes down to culture, to making sure that we have a value system that is really shared, that everybody's focusing in the right direction. So the challenges change all the time, and that's also what makes the adventure so exciting, especially when you're eager to learn new things. Is this the fact that you can never get bored in the role of a founder of a company, I think.
And I think this people part that you mentioned is really crucial for scaling up a company and making it a big success. Mm-hmm. Do you have any recommendations on that? Obviously, a nice office view as you have helps, and also a good life quality in Switzerland. But how do you actually hire the best people that also fit your culture, and where do you find them? Do you have any recommendations for growing startups, how they could solve or do a better job on this?
Well, first of all, we didn't start in a nice office with a view on the lake. We started pretty much in a basement, and it's our fifth or sixth office already in our history. Back in the days, our conference room was the bar down the street, because we had only one room for everybody. So every time we needed to have a difficult discussion with someone, we would move to the bar, which is not an ideal place to have a complex discussion with someone anyway. But I think on how to find the right people, I don't at least have a secret recipe. There is the workplace is changing. I mean, the people on the job market are really changing fast, with the new generation coming, that are in search for a purpose, that are very, very demanding towards the companies they work with as well, and also giving a lot. If you play the cards right, and you're able to mentor them enough so that they can grow and make your company their own personal project. Obviously it goes through stock option plans and a good culture, a good leadership. It takes a lot of time, and it's very easy to get it wrong. But when you are able to get this right with your early employees, then they become very important pillars of your organization later on. And those early employees, pretty much all of our early employees are still with us today and are really making the business work on a day-to-day basis now.
I think that's also a big compliment, basically, because that shows that you probably do a good job in that area, if the early employees are still part of the company.
I think so, and this is part of what we felt we have built, indeed. A team that is working well, and especially in those times when I'm focusing a lot on governance topics and on how to build a company that is a very efficient machine and transforming resources into great products on the market. You looking at personal success of people who are feeling good, who are feeling that they are being performing at 100% of their capacities, that don't have internal roadblock, no politics. When you see this happening, you're really proud, and almost as proud as when you have success on the market with a product, because it means that you have the machine that will allow you further down the line to have a good product on the market that you can launch.
Fantastic. Alexander, after Swisscom Ventures actually invested in Flyability, you also joined the board of the company. So I'm wondering, beyond the financial support, how does Swisscom Ventures also contribute to the company's success that they invest in? What do you work with the company on? What's your involvement?
I mean, we normally, through board or through advisory or even just as an active shareholder, we try to bring into the company our vision of the market and our ideas. Also our knowledge of a particular sector, and so we do in the background also quite a lot of research around, in Flyability's case, of course, around the drone topic, and so our insights we try to, we share with the founders, and we strategize around it. Then as Swisscom, of course, we have on one hand quite a strong interest in the drone market per se. More, let's say, in the drone airspace control areas, in the drone application areas, and in the software side of managing the data captured by drones. So that is one side, and then the other is that obviously, again, Swisscom being an IT company, we are very interested in the back-end solutions of what is, how can you share that data that is captured by drones in a most efficient way. And that's also where we're trying to work with the Flyability team on a strategy, where to integrate, with what tools to integrate, and what partnerships to build.
Patrick, in 2018, you closed your 11 million Series B financing round. Now I'm wondering, what have you already done with the money until today, and what is still in the pipeline for the future?
Definitely, we have delivered on our new product. That was the first large project that we wanted to undertake. At Flyability, we have, maybe it's a bit different across different industries and different startups, but we are hugely self-funded now. We have our sales are mostly what is allowing us to run the day-to-day. With this new product launch and with the business growing, we have a lot of working capital that is increasing in terms of inventory, in terms of accounts receivable, working with large companies as well. So you always have some delay between the moment you close the deal, the moment that the cash is in your account. So I would say that part of this Series B was kind of preparing the company for the next level of size, which requires some money to allow the scaling up. And another part was really dedicated to our internationalization and the growth of our sales team, which is something we've progressed quite well on, as we have opened a subsidiary now in the United States to serve like our biggest markets that we were currently serving from Switzerland. So there's a lot of traveling and a lot of distance with the customers, which is now something that we're getting much better at it. And obviously, there's all those research projects that we're also talking about that represent what is going to be the future evolutions of this industry, and in which we're also putting a lot of money. And so this is what we have been financing as well through this financing round last year.
Fantastic. So there are exciting times ahead.
Absolutely, yeah.
So before we conclude with the episode, I prepared a new format for you guys, some rapid fire questions. So what I basically like to do is I give you a choice of two options, and you basically have to choose one and quickly explain in one sentence why you made this choice. I first start with Alexander for the first one. So your choice will be humans or robots?
Definitely humans. Robots, I see them as tools, more or less operated by humans. You can have a lot of autonomy in those robots, but the important is always the humans. We must make sure that any automation, artificial intelligence serves us primarily and not another purpose.
A very important political topic also at the moment.
Sure.
Patrick, forgiveness or permission?
Yeah, it's the biggest, one of the big value statements of Flyability. Ask for forgiveness, not permission. So definitely for forgiveness. Need to be agile, move really fast, and that's what we mean through this sentence.
Or Zuckerberg would say, move fast and break things, right?
Absolutely, same idea.
And the next one also for you, comfort zone or risk taking?
Risk taking, obviously, I think building a company is all about risk taking for us, for our employees, for our investors. So no, definitely risk taking. I mean, nothing good comes out of staying in your comfort zone all your time.
Absolutely. And the last one for you, wealth or happiness?
Happiness, I guess. Well, wealth can be taken in a very, I would say, metaphorical sense but if wealth means money, definitely happiness is the end goal.
Makes sense. Alexander, last one for you. Small teams, like 10-person teams, for example, or big teams?
I like to invest in small teams and sell when they are big teams.
Sounds like a good plan. Is there anything else that you would like to add to the show that we have not talked about yet, from your perspective?
We could take 4 hours, I guess.
Yeah,
talk for hours, I guess.
Exactly.
But, it was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with us today. And I wish you all the best and lots of success for Flyability and also for Swisscom Ventures. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the content, we would be thrilled to receive your rating on Apple Podcasts. That way you not only support Swisspreneur, but also help other entrepreneurs discovering the show and finding more valuable information on how to run their businesses. Next week, we will already be back with an all new episode of the Swisspreneur Show, so we hope to see you again then for a new episode.